Tonight, a dying man adamantly maintains his innocence 24 years after his arrest for the kidnapping and presumed murder of 18-year-old Heidi Allen. From behind the prison walls of Coxsackie Correctional, Gary Thibodeau appears physically exhausted, and he has nearly exhausted his chances for winning a new trial. The kidnapping of Heidi Allen on Easter Sunday, 1994, instantly grabbed the attention of the Oswego County community and beyond. The posters went up. There was a thirst to find whoever was responsible for her disappearance without a trace. 2 brothers arrested, but only 1 convicted in separate trials. 4 years ago, new information surfaced that led to a hearing and revived hope for Thibodeau to get a new trial. Witnesses came forward after hearing stories over the years that pointed to 3 other men who might be responsible. The lower court rejected Thibodeau's arguments. 2 levels of appeals led to narrowing decisions, but still not enough to favor Gary Thibodeau being granted a new trial. Right now, that same Court of Appeals has been asked to hear a re-argument of Gary Thibodeau's case. In the last few days, the Oswego County District Attorney urged that court to deny that request and keep this man in prison, who had been found guilty by a jury of his peers. From the beginning, the searching.
We have an 18-year-old girl by the name of Heidi Allen.
The public pleas for help.
Thy will be done, on earth as it is
The
in
praying for the return of Heidi Allen.
My client have an opportunity to.
Gary Thibodeau looked to the community like a man capable of the kidnapping of an 18-year-old store clerk. How are you doing?
It's terrible. It gets worse every day. Anybody thinks this is fun and glory, it's crazy. I wouldn't do 24 years of this shit if I was guilty.
Now in hospice care at the Regional Medical Unit of Coxsackie Correctional, Gary Thibodeau is less than 3 months from turning 65. Can you explain to me what you've missed out on by being in here all these years?
I missed my whole life.
This is the first we've seen Gary Thibodeau since his health sharply deteriorated. Just 2 years ago, he looked 20 years younger.
I'll confess to being innocent.
Since then, he's come up short on 2 appeals, the last before the state's highest court in a narrow 4-3 decision. Were you disappointed when you heard that this latest court ruling was close, but you didn't make it?
None of this stuff surprises me.
24 years after his arrest, Gary has not wavered in proclaiming his innocence. He says Oswego County charged him because his brother Dick told police he bought cigarettes that morning at the D&W.
They tried to indict Dick on this without somebody else. They couldn't get an indictment.
Gary Thibodeau is familiar with witness statements describing a man that maybe looked like him that morning, but he says he was home sleeping. That wasn't you.
No, it wasn't me. I wasn't there. They didn't see me there.
Did you know Heidi at all?
I met her once.
Over the years, Thibodeau has grown tired of repeated questions from reporters asking, "Did you kidnap Heidi?" Why does that make you mad when people ask that question?
It's so friggin' rhetorical and ridiculous. You all know well I had nothing to do with this.
How are you doing on hope these days?
On the what?
Hope.
Hope? Funny word. I had so many medical problems with me. No matter if they let me free or not. This ain't no life existence.
He does hope he dies sooner rather than later. He's at peace with his life. You believe in God?
Oh, I believe in a creator. No, you call him God, whatever you want to call him. But I believe in a creator.
What's he saying?
Everything is done for a reason. Damn if I know the reason. I have no idea, but...
Thibodeau has a final message about the kidnapping. If you look up at me and look at that camera, what would you like the court and the prosecutors to know?
I didn't do it. They know I didn't do it. Nothing to do with it.
The Oswego County District Attorney, Gregory Oakes, does not believe Gary Thibodeau's story. Oakes was a college student 24 years ago, but he's carried on this case through these recent appeals as Oswego County's lead prosecutor. He told me this today. I believe the facts put forth in Gary Thibodeau's trial are still accurate today. I do believe Gary Thibodeau is responsible for the kidnapping and presumed death of Heidi Allen. I do believe Gary Thibodeau was involved and knows ultimately what happened to her. Now, tomorrow night, we'll hear from Richard Thibodeau, Gary's brother, who returns with us to the scene of the kidnapping, where he bought 2 packs of cigarettes that Easter Sunday morning. You can watch all these stories and read an in-depth article on our visit with Gary Thibodeau in prison by going to our website, cnycentral.com.
Hello, I'm Brian Hewitt of Hewitt Films. First off, I want to thank Channel 3 News and Matt Mulcahy for bringing the Gary Thibodeau story back into the media. It needs to be said, it needs to be shown, people need to talk about it. Now, I don't know anyone in the Thibodeau family, I don't know anyone in the Allen family, I don't know anyone in the situation. I'm just an observer watching the news, and what I'm observing is very disturbing. We may have an innocent man that's been in jail for 20 years now dying for something he may not have done. That's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. I mean, I've been studying this case since 2014. And looking back on the evidence against Gary, there was none. There was no evidence against Gary back then. He had no motive. There was no DNA, there was no blood, there was no hair, there was nothing found on his property, in his house. And the only thing that convicted Gary Thibodeau was the 2 snitches in jail who said that he confessed to them about the murder and kidnapping. So then 2014 came, and 3 new suspects were brought into light because of Tanya Priest. James Steen told her that him and 2 other guys kidnapped her and murdered her because she was a confidential informant to the police. Now, a confidential informant card was found at the D&W where she was kidnapped. These guys were drug dealers. Now you got a motive. These 3 guys have been talking about similar stories, telling different people throughout the community about the kidnapping and murder. Now you have a motive. You got drug dealers, a confidential informant, and the guys are talking about these 3 new suspects are telling people very similar stories, a little bit different on how she died and how she was killed and what happened to her body. One of them said that she was burned in a barrel. One was said she was burned in a furnace. One said her body was shipped to Canada. One said she was dismembered and put underneath a cabin in the woods. But the stories are still, from the 3 suspects, are still the same. She was a rat, she was an informant, she was a confidential informant to the police. You got 2 stories here. You got the 2014 version, you got the 1994 version. 1994 version tells me Gary's an innocent man. That's just my opinion. So Matt Mulcahy interviewed Gary in prison. You just saw that video and it was heartbreaking. He also interviewed Richard Thibodeau, and this is that right now.
We begin tonight with an NBC3 exclusive. 2 brothers infamous for the crime they were accused of committing, the kidnapping of Heidi Allen. Richard Thibodeau talks tonight about his regrets over letting the police know he bought cigarettes at the D&W convenience store that day.
Gary Thibodeau now is in failing health in a prison hospital in Coxsackie as his chances for a new trial dwindle. He still maintains he was not with his brother on Easter Sunday morning, 1994.
The kidnapping of Heidi Allen instantly grabbed the attention of the Oswego County community. The posters went up. There was a thirst to find whoever was responsible for her disappearance without a trace.
Only one brother was convicted in separate trials. 4 years ago, new information surfaced that led to a hearing and revived hope for Gary Thibodeau to get a new trial. Witnesses pointed to 3 other men who might be responsible.
The lower court rejected Thibodeau's arguments then. 2 levels of appeals led to a narrowing decision, but still not enough to favor Gary Thibodeau's release.
Our stories are generating a new wave of discussion about the well-known kidnapping case, with people questioning whether the right man is serving time.
As we continue tonight, we have the story of 2 brothers and perhaps the most memorable moment of this case, when the jury returned the verdict in the Gary Thibodeau trial.
How do you find the defendant as to count number 1, kidnapping in the first degree?
Guilty.
June of 1995, 14 months after Heidi Allen disappeared, a stunned Gary Thibodeau hears the guilty verdict, even though it was brother Richard who could be placed at the D&W. From our news archive.
His brother Gary Thibodeau was later arrested on the same charge. But the key question in the Allen case remains unanswered. It is a simple question. Why?
The question of why lingered even after the prosecution rested and the jury deliberated. And it seemed like the jury was not even sure you did it.
The jury came back a couple of times and said there was no evidence against me. Twice. And then they come out again. The jury says, the little lady in the front, she says, she looks at me and she's crying and she's mouthing, she's saying like, they made me do it.
Oh, yeah, he's in the wheelchair.
Yeah, he's in the wheelchair.
Yeah, first time I see him up in a long time. Every time I go see him, he's in bed. So.
Right, yeah, and they basically, I think, got him out of bed to...
Yeah, he's not looking too well, is he?
In photos from our interview with Gary, Richard Thibodeau can see his brother's decline. He hasn't made a prison visit in a couple of months. He's sitting now in the front yard of what was his wife's grandmother's home. This is where he had dinner on Easter Sunday, 1994, just a couple of miles from his former home in New Haven, where his day began.
This is where you were the morning she was kidnapped. You drove from here that direction to go to the D&W.
Right. I went from here, I went to the D&W.
Oh, here it is right here, right?
Yep. Yeah. I pulled in that way.
Right,
I turned right here.
right turn.
Yep.
Richard Thibodeau gives us this exclusive ride down Route 104. It's the same route he took that Easter Sunday morning to buy 2 packs of cigarettes at the D&W convenience store.
Well, up a little further, and I'll show you where I parked. Right. Go a little more. Whoa, right? And it was back like this guy was parked right in front of me, right here.
That guy was a witness who placed Richard Thibodeau at the scene but could not place brother Gary there with him.
What's it like to be back here? Weird at all or no big deal?
It's no big deal. I don't like it here, but because we got accused of kidnapping from this place, so I don't really come here that much.
Richard then drove his van home, picked up his family, made his way to his wife's grandmother's house. He recalls they passed the police tape at the convenience store, not knowing what happened.
After a while, it'll come on TV that Heidi Allen was kidnapped from the store. I said to her grandma, I said, well, I was there. I said, everything was fine when I left. She says, maybe you ought to call and let them know that you were at least there. So I did, like a dummy. I shouldn't have done that.
You and Dick weren't even together that morning.
No. Dick and I were hardly ever together. Never. We go play pool, we work on cars once in a while, we work construction, 6 houses. That's about it.
While Gary has served more than 23 years in prison, Richard calls his home, his yard, his own prison. He was not allowed in court to watch his brother's trial.
Were you surprised, though, when you got the news that he'd been convicted?
Yeah, I was shocked. I started crying.
The Thibodeaus are well known because of this case, although Richard feels the harsh attention has eased as people have come to believe more in Gary's innocence.
What would you like to see done for your brother at this point?
I would like to see him get out and get to a good hospital where he could get some medical attention, some good medical attention.
You think you're going to die?
Oh, I know we're all going to die. Some sooner than others. I hope mine is sooner than others. This is ridiculous.
He's in terrible health.
You can tell he's
Yeah.
exhausted every day. It's a chore.
Tomorrow, we hear from the Oswego County District Attorney Gregory Oakes.
Yeah, Oakes was a college student going back to 1994, but he's carried on this case through these recent appeals as Oswego County's lead prosecutor. I sit down with him to talk with him about his view that Gary Thibodeau is responsible for Heidi Allen's disappearance. You'll hear that tomorrow on NBC3 News. You can watch all these stories, read an in-depth article on our visit to Gary Thibodeau in prison by going to our website, CNY.